Anyway, today guys, I'm going to be installing shocks on an 84 GMC pickup truck. It'll be the same for a 73 through 87 two-wheel drive, and it's going to be very similar to anything that's leaf spring rear, control arm front as far as the pickup truck's concerned. Today we're going with the KYB Mono Maxes for both the front and the rear. These are supposed to be very similar to a Bilstein, but about half the cost. I spent about 230 bucks on the set. We're going to start with the front end. So let's get to it. Well, anytime you're working on a project, you're going to want to get your tools together up front and go ahead and spray any old rusty bolts that you have to work on with some kind of penetrating lubricant. I've already taken the time to do that, so all the bolts have been sprayed already. I've gotten my tools collected up and ready to go. Today I'm opting to use the air compressor and the Earthquake XT 1/2-inch impact gun because these are old rusty bolts, so I'm thinking that'll help zip them off of there quicker. If you don't have that, just use a socket and a set of wrenches. I've done it before every time I've ever done it in my life up until this time, the old-fashioned way with just a socket set and a wrench set, or in this case a wrench and a socket and socket wrench. So it's a really easy job. There's no reason to sweat it at all. Let's go ahead and get set up, get a better angle, and I'll show you what we need to do first. So if you're looking at the truck, by the way, you don't need a jack or jack stands. You don't need to lift the vehicle or anything at all, as long as you can reach up in there. Find a creative way to get up in there and you'll be fine. Now, I look right here, my truck actually still has all the plastic or rubberized whatever, that splash shields and stuff. Let's see if I can get light up in there where you can see it. Right behind this little splash shield. Go back here and you can see this first top bolt that I'm pointing at. That needs to come out. It's 11/16. We'll get that out, and then you can get the shock off, the top part of the shock off, drop it out of the way. And if you choose to actually replace the, ooh, that's a weird way to hold it. If you choose to actually replace your shock tower bolts that come with the shocks, which I would highly suggest doing, that's the point you would knock those loose. But I'm going to get those bolts off, show you what it looks like after that, and then we'll catch back up. Shock there. There's the bolt where it went. All right. Right there. That's it. So I just took that bolt off and then tapped the shock until it popped off of that little stud right there and got it out of the way. Next will be, we'll have to go behind here. See, here's the headers there. You go back behind that frame right there and hold that bolt in place behind it with a wrench, and then get on it with a wrench on this side and turn it on out of there. And you do that on both sides, and then your top is removed. And then come down here to the bottom, take that bolt out right there. You need to save that bolt. It typically doesn't come with your shocks. I don't know why it doesn't. It comes with a whole top stud, both front and rear, but they don't give you a bottom bolt for some reason. But anyhow, you'll take that bolt out, and then your whole shock assembly will come out. Now this is a pretty telltale sign that the shock is completely dead here. I can compress it, and it doesn't go back up on its own. So it's definitely time to do this. Alright, a couple of helpful hints. One, when you get your new bolts and hardware, you're going to want to go ahead and take the nut and run it all the way down and back off again. It's going to make it a lot easier when you get ready to install it, because these threads are, they're cut and they're not going to take the time to come back and clean them later. So by doing that, it just makes it slide on there a lot easier. Or not slide on there, but thread on there a lot easier. And also, you've got some decisions to be made now, because the new hardware does not come with washers. on this back side where it actually bolts to the frame, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. They give you a nice lock washer that's not on from the factory. On the factory setup is just these two flat washers on a bolt on both sides. Now on the side where the shock actually mounts, I am going to opt for the washers. I'm going to use the old washers and put them on there just because it makes me feel better. There's a lot less surface for that to be actually gripping to. I feel like the washer is going to help with that. But that's really a decision for you. You can do it either way, and I don't know that either one's going to be better than the other.
Alright, like I said, installation is just the opposite of removal. I'm going to put this stud up top and go from there. Tell you what, I'm just going to get it all put back on there and y'all can watch. You saw it come off, you know how to go back on. Dig it? Alright, cool. Well, there's the problem. You can't actually put anything on there. It's just a flat side. Two sides. It's completely around. That's not set up for a socket to go on. I don't know if KYB did that on purpose or what. Alright, well we just learned a valuable lesson together. If you don't have to remove this top stud, just don't. And to be honest, I haven't in the past. I was just making a video for the internet, so I decided to use all new stuff and do it the fancy way, and that's replacing everything that was in the package. But now I remember why I don't, because it's not only extra work that's unnecessary as long as this stud's in good shape, but it also runs you into this problem with that stud that came with not actually accepting anything to tighten it down with. And it'll accept a 13/16 wrench, but I only have one, whereas the factory stuff was at least smart enough to have different sizes on either side, so you're not, trying to use if you only have one wrench of that size. Anyway, point being, we're going back with the factory stuff, and yeah, that's it. Alright, so this part can be a bit of a pain in the ass, especially with a really strong monotube shock like this. So I'm going to just try and do it without a jack, which I always think that's the easiest way if you can. And then you just compress this and get it to fit in here. And I'll let y'all watch me do that because it might be embarrassing. Holy shit. I'm gonna feel this tomorrow. It's a hell of a lot harder than it. Woo! Alright, we're running into a common issue. Just gonna let that rest there. Oh shit. Very common issue. She definitely doesn't want to fit right now. So let me go see if I have a shorter stud that I can press through this eyelet. If not, I'm gonna have to bend this out or grind that down, one or the other. I'll get back with you. Alright, I think the best thing to do here is just to grind that and that down to where it'll fit the stock shock mount location, or whatever I'm trying to say there. I'm tired. I need to get that grinded down on both of them. Hopefully that'll solve that issue. Maybe we won't have to do that on the back, but we probably will. One thing you definitely want to pay attention to when you're grinding on this is the heat. You don't want to keep grinding on it. You're not going to get it all ground down first session is the point. Because if you get it that hot, not only will you start melting the actual bushing here,
but the heat will transfer and it starts heating up the end of the shock, which I don't necessarily think is all that safe either. So just keep that in mind. Pop back and forth when you're grinding and give it longer than you think to cool down. This shock has been sitting for about 15 minutes after grinding and it's still warm on the end compared to all the other shocks that I wasn't grinding on. So it's definitely transferring that heat. Y'all be careful.
Alright, well there we go. I got both shocks ground down right there and there to where they'll go into the eyelet. Everything seems to be fine from there. So I'm going to finish up this front end and we'll move on to the back. Alright, well here we are. I've crawled under the truck. I'm on the driver's side, behind the axle, because that's where you get access to the shock. There's one behind the axle on the driver's side and there's one in front of the axle on the passenger side if you're running the stock setup. These are fairly straightforward as well. You just got a bolt on the bottom right there, and then you've got one up there. This down here is nice and wide. Looks like I'm not going to have any trouble getting in the bottom of the new shock. That's nice. We may not have to do any grinding on it. And that up there shouldn't be a problem either. I'm going to opt to not replace the stud unless I find any damage. So let's get to it. Actually, I'm just going to get those knocked off of there and I'll show you what it looks like with them off and we'll throw them back on. It's super simple stuff. I don't really know how to explain it any further other than to just show you. Well, got it off of there. I just went ahead and knocked the whole stud loose from the top so that I can replace the bolt and put it back on. Here's a good indicator that this has got a lot more strength than the fronts did, which honestly is weird. It means it's in a lot better shape because the front should have been a lot harder to push in, but still I shouldn't have been able to push it in that easily. And then you can see how slowly it tries to come back out. It is toast. So let me get this bolt knocked loose. Actually, let me just check the... Alright, so let me get the stud on the other shock, get that in place, and we'll go from there. Well, there you have it. Shock in place. Bottom bolt in, top bolt in. Put our zip tie on, bellow, and we're moving around to the front of the axle on the passenger side, and it's going to be the exact same process. So we'll get over there and knock that out and go from there. Alright, so here we are, passenger side. As you can see, the drive shaft will be in the way on this side, but you won't have the tire in the way of your back. You just crawl up in here, knock the top stud off, take that bolt out, remove your shock, put your stud on the new shock, and do the same thing we did over there. Alright, well, there you go. Bob's your uncle. Install complete. We got shocks all the way around. Oh, I don't think I can get in a position to even look forward and see how much of that y'all can see. I can't turn my head enough. But you can probably see two new front shocks up there as well. I don't think I've put the zip ties on the boots yet, so I'm going to check that before we clean the tools up. But that pretty much covers the installation. And after this we'll go do a test drive, because no job is complete until you've confirmed your work and done a test drive. And I just need an excuse to drive my truck. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. I mean, you can pretty much stop watching the video here. You see what it looks like when it's done. I'm not trying to waste y'all's time and get you to just sit here and watch a long ass video. So there you go. That's how you take off and replace shocks on a 73 to 87 Chevy or GMC truck.